So this is a speaker meeting. Our speaker will share her experience, strength, and hope for approximately 45 minutes. We ask out of respect for the speaker to please remain seated until she has finished. It is my pleasure to introduce Cassie.
I think so. Hi. My name's Cassie. I'm an alcoholic. Hi. So my sobriety date is September 8th, 2011. And I actually spoke here on my 1 year. I was a 15-minute opening speaker, and this place looked a lot bigger. But I can tell you I'm exactly the same level of nervous tonight as I was that night. So that has not changed. I want to thank everybody for allowing me to come here and share my story with you. Even though I'm nervous, this is one of the best things that I feel like I can do in AA is give back. I mean, so much was given to me in the beginning and throughout my sobriety that I feel like anytime anybody asks me to do something here, I should do my best to do it, even though I'm terrified right now. Hopefully that kind of wears off as I go through this next 45 minutes. We'll see. So I'm just going to talk about what it was like for me and what happened and what it's like now. A little bit about my drinking. I pretty much always drank abnormally. I never drank I didn't even know what wine tasting was. What is that? I always drank for the effect. And the people that I was around did the same thing, so it really didn't seem weird to me. My family, when I was a kid, my mom would have parties and we would drink with the adults. It was just like a normal thing. And so it just didn't seem strange to me. And then when I did encounter somebody who was like a social or casual drinker who would have like one or two drinks and then be like, oh, I guess I'm gonna go to bed now, I thought that was weird. That was weird to me. And so I can't really say that I ever drank normally, but I don't feel like I always drank alcoholically. Growing up, I know this is AA, but drugs are a part of my story, so I'll definitely be mentioning that. As a kid, I got involved in a couple of different things, and I really liked meth. It was my thing, right? And I say that because after a couple of years doing that, I went to a rehab, and I've never given it a second thought. I've never thought about doing meth since going to rehab. I was able to walk away from it. That's absolutely not the case with alcohol. It had me by the throat. And even when I wasn't drinking alcoholically, I was thinking about drinking. So when I was 17, I got sober from drugs. And, I was still doing some drinking, but I got pregnant with my first. And that was a game changer for me, you guys. I had this baby, and I just fell in love. She just became my absolute, it was like I found my purpose. And that was just to be the best mom I could be to this little girl. And, I stayed sober through my pregnancy. I stayed sober pretty much through, her early years. Met my husband. We had 2 more kids. I didn't do a whole lot of drinking. I chose not to. I chose to make it my mission just to be a good mom to them. And something changed, and I can't really pinpoint what it was, but I know exactly when it was. It was when my youngest started going to school, and kind of like my purpose kind of faded out. They got involved in school stuff, and that was when my drinking really started to take off. It started out with day drinking, right? Which, everybody was kind of doing that, around me. It didn't seem like it was something abnormal. But what was abnormal was I would take it's 5 o'clock somewhere to like a whole new level. Sure, it's 5 o'clock somewhere, but it's 8 a.m. here, Cassie, so probably slow down, right? So, there were signs that I knew something was off. And the rest of the people that used to drink like me, heavy drinkers, were disgusted by the way I was drinking. So, it definitely occurred to me that there was something weird, but I never wanted to quit. I never wanted to stop drinking. So about 3 or 4 years of that just drinking all the time, I started to kind of think, okay, well, maybe I should quit. Maybe I should try to quit or slow down. And I couldn't. I just couldn't. I would make a decision to not drink that day, and I would find myself drunk. And I just didn't understand it. It didn't make any sense to me because I could always choose before. And I didn't know it then, but looking back, I had crossed over. I had made that transition from having the power of choice to not. And it really blew me away because I had the whole meth thing, right? And I was like, well, when I said I wanted to quit, I got sober for 30 days and I never thought about it again. Why can't I do that with this? And I believe that's what makes me an alcoholic, is that I, at some point, lost the power to choose if I was going to drink or not. So by then, every time I would try to stop drinking, I would have seizures. My body just would freak out. And I would end up in the hospital, and the doctors would look at me and say, your blood work looks terrible, and your body is, your liver is failing, your body is rejecting what you're doing to it. Here's some help, here's some AA pamphlets, here's this, here's that. And I really was terrified. I really was scared that this was how I was going to die. And I would leave the hospital and drink. Every time. No matter how badly it got for me, for my body, for my soul, my spirit, my family, for some reason, in my mind at that time, I didn't get it. I had to drink. And it came to a point in time where nobody would talk to me. And that was a pretty big red flag, right? No one wants to be around you. Nobody wants to talk to you. Even my mom stopped talking to me. And if you know my mom at all, she's the biggest frickin' Al-Anon. She just needed to just be born in Al-Anon. She would talk to me through everything. I don't care how big of a drunk I was. She was there. So when she stopped talking to me, I was like, well, okay, something's weird. But it wasn't even I was had this revelation. What happened was I just got really angry. I just got really mad that nobody would talk to me anymore. And I was like, how dare they? How dare they not talk to me? And I just go, I remember waking up one morning and just go, I know what I'll do. I'll get sober and I won't talk to them. I'll show them. I'll get sober and then I won't have anything to do with them, right? So I definitely drove to my first AA meeting willingly, but super angry, just ridiculously angry. In Cottonwood at the Alano Club, they have a U-turn kind of parking lot situation. And I just remember I would go in and then do the U-turn. And then I would pull in again and be like, yes, I'm going. No, I'm not. Tomorrow. And then, I must have done the U-turn. They probably were just laughing, here's a green one, just doing U-turns in the parking lot. So finally I parked and I begrudgingly walked into this meeting. And I just remember thinking, it's going to be like the movies. Everybody's going to be chanting. It's going to be super weird, I knew nothing about AA, but, we just know what we're exposed to. So I walk in and I sat in the back corner. I didn't make eye contact with anybody. And I noticed that people were talking to each other and laughing and making plans for the weekend, making plans for after the meeting, And I thought, did I get here too late to get the pill that made them feel okay? I really thought you guys were taking something that made it comfortable not to drink. And it turns out you weren't. So I'm sitting in this meeting and I'm just listening to what people have to say, and I'm hearing them talk about drinking like I drank. And they're sober. 6 months, 8 months, a year, 4 years, 12 years, 30 years sober. And I can't even think about being 30 minutes sober. And I'm like, how are they happy? It just didn't make any sense to me. So after the meeting, this chick comes up to me and she's like, hey, do you want to go have coffee sometime? Here's my number, da-da-da-da-da. And I'm like, oh yeah, coffee. I'm like, what the hell is she talking about, coffee? So I take her phone number with no intention of calling her or texting her or anything. And she goes, "Are you going to be here tomorrow?" And I go, "Sure." And she's like, "Cool, me too." So I came back the next day, and this was really big for me. I came back the next day, and I saw that woman sitting in the same spot she was sitting the day before. And I felt okay coming in and sitting with her. And that was a huge deal for me because I didn't feel okay doing anything at that time, and it made it to where I felt like I belonged. I felt like I had my purpose again, kind of. So about, I don't know, probably 2 or 3 months of going to that same meeting every day and her asking me if I had gotten a sponsor yet, and me telling her, "No, I don't think I'm gonna." She's like, "Okay, you gonna share?" "No, I don't think I'm gonna." Finally, I just got up the nerves. Got to be a God thing, because I certainly didn't want to have somebody sponsoring me, you know. I got up the nerve, and she was getting on her Harley after the meeting, and she had all her leathers on, and I'm like, well, this isn't intimidating. She had all her leathers on. She's blasting from her Harley, "I shot the sheriff," right? And I shakingly walk. I'm already a mess. I'm just a freaking mess, right? And I walk up to her and I'm like, "Hi, so do you think you would sponsor me?" And she's like, "Hell yeah, I'll take you through the steps. Let's do this." She was all excited about it. And I was like, "Okay, cool." But it was something that was just humbling for me to ask somebody to help me do something that I just didn't understand how I couldn't do it on my own. I had done so much on my own. So we're going through the steps, and, during this time, my family's still not really talking to me. They don't know if it's for real this time. And we're going through the steps, and I took my third step in my backyard, and she ended up asking me, she's like, because my kids were living with my mom at this time. They just wanted nothing to do with me. They were terrified. And I was violent and unpredictable drinking. And so she's like, "Kids coming back home anytime soon, or what do you got going on?" And I'm like, "Oh, I guess maybe they should," maybe they should. And I think that's why it's so important to find somebody in this program when you come in that's been through it, because we really don't know how to act. I didn't know how to be a human. I didn't know how to mom. I didn't know how to friend. I didn't know how to wife. I didn't know how to do any of those things. And this chick just, she offered friendly suggestions along the way. So I went and I got my kids back, and I, moved them back home with me. It was a big moment for me. A little while later, I'm on my 5th, 6th step, and my youngest wanted to go over to my mom's to spend the night, and I'm like, "Sure." So she goes over there, and she calls me at 10 o'clock, "Mom, I really want to come home. I want to be with you." And that was I knew that something was changing for me, because they just were so terrified of me when I was drinking. And so I knew this thing, although I didn't really 100% get it, something was happening to me through those steps. So I think at this point I was on my amends, and I get a call from my stepmom that my dad isn't doing well and that I should come see him. He was diagnosed with brain cancer, and she's like, "It's just really important. He wants to see you. We don't really know what's going on with him." And so I flew out to New Mexico, where I'm from, and I went and saw him. And he was definitely on my resentments. This guy, we didn't really have much of a relationship, and I definitely blamed a lot of my stuff on him. I blamed my insecurities. I blamed my daddy issues, whatever those are. I blamed all this stuff on the fact that this guy just kind of left me hanging. He left my mom, he left us when we were little. And I kind of was like, that's why I'm so screwed up. Even as an adult, I blamed him for that. And it took going through this process that we do here in the steps to realize that that's on me. That's on me as an adult woman to clean up. He played his part, but me watering that resentment and letting it grow and letting it just eat me alive, basically, it's me. And it took the whole victim thing out of it. So I go to see him, and he's at the hospital, and he's just not looking good, and something just kind of forced me to just ask for a minute alone with him. And I walked up to him and I just whispered, I said, Dad, you and me, we're good. As far as I'm concerned, we're good. And I love you. And he goes, I love you too. And I kissed him on his forehead. And you guys, I walked out of that hospital lighter than air, just floated out of that hospital. The weight of all that bull crap was just off my shoulders. And that was the last time I talked to him. That was the last time I saw him. He passed away a couple of days after that, and I ended up, going to his funeral. But I felt gratitude. I felt gratitude that I was able to have that moment with him. And without what we do here, I wouldn't have had that. There's just no way. There's no way. I would have continued to be angry with him, and I would have lost him having never cleared that up. So right away it showed me that I'd really better pay attention to what goes on in here. And I'd really better stick close, because you guys had something that I just had never found anywhere else trying to get sober. So I finished my 12 steps with my sponsor, and this girl comes and asks me if I would sponsor her. And I'm like, we had just barely closed the book of me taking the steps, and this chick comes up and she's like, will you take me through the steps? And I was just terrified. I'm like, what if I make her drink? And she's just like, my sponsor's like, well, okay, you don't have that kind of power. You're not God. But, and then taking her through the steps was like, it was, I wouldn't say better than going through the steps myself, but I believe I got more than she ever did out of that process. I don't know where she is now, but I'm sober. And every time that I take somebody through the steps, I genuinely feel like I get more than they do. I feel like it's part of what we do here, giving it back. So life is really in session for me at this point, and I'm getting my marriage back together, my kids are home, my family is starting to talk to me one at a time, and I'm just, we bought a new house, everything's just going really well. And my oldest ends up being diagnosed with cancer. And this is the little girl who changed my life, This is the little girl who really opened my eyes to be the kind of person that I am today. I'm sorry. She's diagnosed with cancer, and we lost her 13 months, almost to the date, after diagnosis. Now, I'm not going to say that life has been just beautiful and peaches and roses and whatever 100% of the time in AA. But what I can tell you is that for 5 years of that girl's life, I was a sober mom, and I was there for her in her biggest time of need to walk her through that. And I was sober to do it. And I just wouldn't have had that without you guys. I wouldn't have had it without this program. There's something just so beautiful about that. So I guess if I just really had anything to say to you guys tonight is just, if you're new here, you're thinking about being new, just get with a sponsor, take the steps. I mean, it's a life changer. It really is. Thank you.